Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Kaylee, and this is Read, Rant, Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. I give you a beat-by-beat, chapter-by-chapter breakdown of some crazy book that I read recently. Today we are continuing my dissection of the Colleen Hoover universe, we'll say. I don't know. I'm going through the woman's whole catalog. I have a whole playlist dedicated to it if this is something that you like to hear about. Today we are covering Regretting You. This novel was published in 2019 and currently on Goodreads. It is sitting at a 4.11 with over 772,000 ratings, and it is slated to get its own big box office movie in October, at the end of October of 2025. So in 2 months. You know how ridiculous that is? I'm not sure why we keep handing this woman movie deals. I don't know, but we're gonna talk about it today. If that wasn't clear, this is a Colleen Hoover hater account. Don't watch this if you're Colleen Hoover, if you're a friend, a fan, a family member, a stan, anything like that. Don't make it weird. Like I said, I'm here to give you a breakdown of this book, what to expect, some critiques, some giggles, some hee-hees and ha-has. Don't make it weird, okay? Along with the fun, one of the things that one of my wonderful subscribers has done is made a bingo card, a Colleen Hoover specific bingo card that I will have linked in the description box below if you want to play along as I tell you all about this. Other fun things in the description box is a link to my Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Also have a link to my gaming channel if you want to check that out. The other thing that I usually like to provide before we begin the deep dive is a content or trigger warning. Coho notoriously does not provide these in her books. This one in particular is really not bad compared to some of the other ones. There's no outright abuse, there's no craziness or SA or anything like that is more typical of her books. And if I tell you literally any other content warnings, it's gonna ruin the first 2 chapters. So I will gloss over the things that might be alarming to somebody or uncomfortable. I'll gloss over them pretty quickly. And otherwise, I'll go ahead and read you the book description so that you know what we're getting into, and we'll dive right in. Morgan Grant and her 16-year-old daughter Clara would like nothing more than to be nothing alike. Morgan is determined to prevent her daughter from making the same mistakes she did by getting pregnant and married way too young. Morgan put her own dreams on hold. Clara doesn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps. Her predictable mother doesn't have a spontaneous bone in her body. With warring personalities and conflicting goals, Morgan and Clara find it increasingly difficult to coexist. The only person who can bring peace to the household is Chris, Morgan's husband, Clara's father, and the family anchor. But that peace is shattered when Chris is involved in a tragic and questionable accident. The heartbreaking and long-lasting consequences will reach far beyond just Morgan and Clara. While struggling to rebuild everything that crashed around them, Morgan finds comfort in the last person she expects to, and Clara turns to the one boy she's been forbidden to see. With each passing day, new secrets, resentment, and misunderstandings make mother and daughter fall further apart. So far apart, it might be impossible for them to ever fall back together. Admittedly, probably, I don't want to say it's the most interesting of Coho's books because she has books like Layla and Verity and whatnot, but it's definitely up there. It's one of her better books. I will give you that. This is the most Murray, daytime television, drama thing that I've ever seen in one of her books, where the whole time I was just oh my God, and just kept getting worse, you know what I mean? So for that entertainment factor, this book is great. Entertainment factor, this book was what is happening? In terms of writing quality, I have the same complaints that I always do with Coho. We'll get into it. I'll tell you about it as we go. Without further ado, let's begin. Our book begins with a 17-year-old friend group. I know. Which Colleen Hoover book are we talking about again? How many of this woman's freaking books are based on high schoolers? I don't understand. Chapter 1, and I'm literally going to have a character list because this book, again, is so messy and so confusing, and there's so many characters. Chapter 1 opens with a 17-year-old named Morgan, her sister Jenny, who is a year younger than her, and their boyfriends, Chris and Jonah. Chris and Jonah are BFFs, dating the sisters. Morgan and Jonah are the like more, serious caretaker ones of the group. Like Jonah's always the DD, and Morgan kind of acts more of like a mother figure to her little sister. And Chris and Jenny party a bunch, right? So they all kind of like even each other out. Like Jonah and Jenny, Chris and Morgan, everybody balances each other. It's a good time. It's the summer after the couple of them had graduated high school, and they're just vibing. They're about to go to a graduation party. On the way to the party, somebody makes a comment about how they graduated 6 weeks ago, and Morgan realizes that she is 12 days late for her period. Uh-oh. So she realizes she's probably pregnant at the same time that her sister is getting sloshed and talking about how she wants to have her first intimate experience with Jonah that night. So there's just a lot happening with these teenagers. Also, we've checked off like 4 boxes already, talking about pregnancies and whatnot, surprise pregnancies. Because again, lightning speed that we're going to run through this bingo card in this particular book, okay? There's also her dad's dead. So we can also check off the dead parent list. He died 5 years ago, so that's the other reason that she's like a parental figure to Jenny. In chapter 2, we cut to Clara's perspective. It's 17 years later. Clara is Morgan's daughter. Turns out the late period was in fact a baby. Clara is now 16 years old. On this particular day, she is driving home from school. She sees a boy on the side of the road that she's like maybe kind of sort of friends with. He's been like actively avoiding her all year though, and there's like some weird tension, and his name is Miller. Last name for a first name type beat. So he's walking home. It's summertime. He's wearing jeans and a black t-shirt, and she feels bad because it's like super hot, and she's like, I don't want him to have a heat stroke. So she pulls over to the side of the road. She tries to pick him up, and he says, yeah, I'll hop in, but can you help me with something real quick? She gets out of the car. It's so hot outside that like the tar on the road is like sticky and it ruins her flip-flop. It's relevant, I promise. And she's like, well, you owe me a flip-flop. And he says, okay, fine, but help me out with this. And what he's doing is picking up a sign on the side of the road. Again, what book am I reading? I feel like I'm reading Reminders of Him. If you're unfamiliar, in that book, it opens with a woman picking up a roadside memorial in chapter 1. And then in this one, they are actually, what they're picking up from the side of the road is the city limit sign. Because Miller is, it's kind of funny in like a stupid way. He is slowly picking up and moving the city limit sign like 20 feet further and further out every day so that the pizza place in town, they don't deliver outside of city limits. And so he's like slowly moving this sign so that his house will be in city limits so that they'll deliver to his house. So she helps him accomplish this. And also I would just like to say, for this book to have been written in 2019, that's like such a stupid thing because it would be based off of GPS and actual coordinates or like a whatever that they would type into the system. It wouldn't be based off of some like arbitrary sign, but God forbid we put some thought into the thing. The idea of it's fun and quirky and cute, right? So anyway, they move the sign, they hop in the car, she drives him home. On the way to his house, his girlfriend calls and he lies to his girlfriend. He's like, yeah, some dude picked me up. Sorry, I gotta go. This makes Clara feel bad because his girlfriend's in college and she's like feeling really inadequate and, just kind of weird. And also Miller's like really hot, right? So she wants to impress him, even though he avoids her and it's kind of awkward. She like wants him real bad, makes it real apparent in her little mental thoughts. Like all she can think about is how attractive this guy is. They get to his house and he says, hey, I do owe you money for that flip-flop. How about you come inside? Like my wallet's inside the house. Like I'll give you some money. So she goes inside of his house. She meets his grandpa who has cancer and who's dying. Hey, weird. Again, the bingo checkbox is going crazy right now. So grandpa's dying. They have a little chit chat. He's a grumpy little fun guy. He's a curmudgeon. They bond a little bit talking crap about Miller. And she's like so happy. And when she goes to leave his house, he follows her on Instagram. Oh my gosh, how scandalous. She is so excited about this. Cut back to mom's POV. She married Chris. They literally, the day after, so she realized she was pregnant, took a test, figured it out, told her boyfriend Chris, and he proposed the next day when they were 17 years old. Yeah, so they got married. They got married. and had Clara, obviously. So they're vibing. Jenny, the sister, she's still really close. They're hanging out at her house because it's Morgan's birthday this day. Jonah, turns out, he had moved out of state that summer, like completely unannounced, and just disappeared into the night, basically, and abandoned the friend group and hadn't talked to them for years until his father had died pretty recently, and Jenny attended Jonah's father's funeral. So then Jonah and Jenny rekindled their relationship. They have this one night stand. She gets pregnant. Jonah finds out. He moves back into town like right before the baby is born, right before she goes on maternity leave and whatnot. So he's been in town for 3 months and they have a brand new newborn baby. And as they're prepping for dinner this night, everybody's kind of chit-chatting about all these new life changes, the baby, the move. Jonah is now teaching at Clara's high school. He's a history teacher. Chris got a big promotion recently, so he's like a businessman. He's working all the time. And Jenny's working at a hospital. She's also picking up shifts a whole bunch. Like, everybody's just grinding. And Morgan is realizing how kind of hollow she feels. Like, she doesn't really feel like she has much of like a purpose in life or like a passion. Her entire life is Chris and Clara. And that's it. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's not working. And now she's like so excited to be taking care and helping out with this little baby. But her goal for her birthday, her and Clara make these like vision boards on their birthdays. And she decides to put on there to find her passion, to figure out what she wants to do. Along with that, at this dinner, there is some conversation about Miller and Clara giving Miller a ride home. Turns out Miller's dad is in jail for like selling pot or DUIs or something like that. And so Chris like freaks out about her talking to him. Clara's best friend Lexi also crashes the dinner, and she just ends up being the like quirky side character for the book. You know what I mean? You always got to have the comedic relief best friend. So that's what she is. And what else happens at the dinner? Jonah corners her in the kitchen and he's like, hey, what's going on? There's like a tension, you know? I come back and I pick up like I left off with Chris and Jenny, and we're all fine, but there's like some weird tension between you and I. What's going on with that? Like, I just want to be friends again. And for her birthday, he gives her a bag of watermelon jelly ranchers. Jolly Ranchers. Everybody jokes about how that's the worst flavor, but that's her favorite. It's my favorite too. And she's so happy. It also got brought up in chapter 1 that he had saved her watermelon Jolly Ranchers. And in that moment, I knew that would be the quirky thing in the book, is her passion for these. And I knew it would reoccur. I knew it would come back up. I knew Colleen Hoover would bring it back up. I just wasn't expecting it in chapter 3. Like, didn't even let the thing simmer before she brings it back, right? Anyway, so he gives her these Jolly Ranchers. She's like, oh my God, he really does know me. And is flattered by it. You know, like I said, she makes this vision board with Clara. And in the process of this, she asks Clara, like, what is one word to describe me? And Clara uses the term predictable. And this breaks Morgan's heart. It's just like that confirmation of everything that she's been feeling, that like, you know, she doesn't really have anything that's like hers or like a true definition of like who she is. When we go into chapter 4, we're back into Clara's POV. It's the following morning, and this is the first morning that Morgan has not made her breakfast because Morgan's on strike. She said, you know what? I am not predictable. She's like really sticking it to the man. And on this morning, everybody's getting ready for school. Everybody's getting ready for work. Jenny comes by to drop off the baby, Elijah. She has to watch the baby for this like next week while Jenny goes back to work until like the daycare will be available to watch the baby or something. So this is just like a real intermediate fix, right? Taking care of this kid. So just chaos in the house. Again, not to keep making Colleen Hoover references within this video, but it felt very much like the book Without Merit, where there was like 18 family members and there was like just shenanigans happening everywhere that is supposed to, I believe, feel immersive, or it's supposed to feel like real, but really it just felt cluttered. Does that make sense? I don't know. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So they have this like crazy family scene in the morning, getting ready. Clara leaves to go and pick up her trope of a best friend, Lexi. Lexi tells her that Miller and his girlfriend broke up the night before because Clara had given Miller a ride home. I'm saying so many names right now. Again, I have a name thing on screen if you need it, okay? I know, trust me. So him and his girlfriend broke up, and Clara, this little hussy, is low-key, she feels kind of bad, but also, hey, when they get to school, Clara decides that she's going to go and talk to Jonah about this film thing that she's wanting to do, this film competition. So she wants to go to school to be an actress, and when she went over to Miller's house the other day, she went into his room and had seen a bunch of stuff about like some photography and how he wants to be a director, and he also wants to go to film school, which, by the way, Film School is a wonderful song by Sydney Gish. You should look it up. It's so funny. She sings the word occasion, but she says occasion. Oh no. How does she say it? This is going to bother me now. On occasion instead of occasion. Dude, when I first heard that song, it drove me crazy, but now it's so cute to me. Anyway, he wants to go to film school. She wants to go to school for acting. It's a huge point of contention in her household. And so she goes to talk to Jonah, who is this adjacently trusted adult. Right? It's her dad's best friend, and it's her aunt's soon-to-be husband, so it's like a safe adult, and it's a teacher. And so she goes and talks to him about this filming thing, and Jonah says, well, yeah, why don't you should sign up for it, and also, yeah, Miller's interested in it too, you guys should like do something together. And when Miller gets to class, Jonah says this to him, and Miller says no, because he doesn't want to like continue a relationship with Clara, because he doesn't want to make his ex-girlfriend like jealous, and it's just kind of like some weirdness there, and so he doesn't want to do it. But when he leaves, of course, Clara signs the two of them up to do this film competition together. Clara then goes on to text her aunt Jenny about the situation with Miller. She had talked to her aunt previously about the Miller situation and was like venting to her about, him having a girlfriend and it being complicated and taking him, to his house, and just, how she just can't stop thinking about him. And her aunt had said, just kind of be careful. And then now this time when she's texting her aunt about Miller breaking up with his girlfriend and this whole art thing, her aunt gives her this really cryptic message about being the other woman in a relationship. And Clara kind of says, what the frick? Hello? What are you talking about? And the chapter ends. And I know I've said it a lot so far, but like I said, you should have a bingo by the end of this chapter. In chapter 5, Morgan's POV, she's watching the baby at home. She's hanging out. She's minding her own business. She gets a phone call telling her that her husband has been in an accident. She rushes to the hospital. On the way there, she's calling Jenny. Can't get a hold of her. When she gets to the hospital, Jenny happens to work here. She works in the labor and delivery ward, so she rushes down there to try and find her sister. And they tell her that Jenny didn't come to work today. She wasn't due to come back to work from maternity leave until like tomorrow. What are you talking about? Okay, that's kind of weird. And so she rushes to like the emergency thing to try and like find her husband. And while she's like rushing around, she runs into Jonah. And it turns out Jonah got called to the hospital because Jenny has also been in an accident. And eventually they realize that Chris and Jenny were in a car accident together, and that Chris was driving Jenny's car. And the doctor comes in and he tells them that Chris and Jenny are both dead. What? We're in chapter 5. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? In chapter 6, we're in Clara's point of view. It's the following week, and she's dealing with, obviously, the grief of losing her aunt and her father, and like how overwhelming this is. And she blames herself because she's like, when the car accident happened, I was texting my Aunt Jenny. Like, she must have been texting and driving, and that's what caused the accident. Because Morgan had lied to her about what had happened and how they had died. And she was like, yeah, Jenny had picked up Chris after he got a flat tire. So that's why they were in the car together. And so Clara like internalizes this as this being her fault. Oh God. Because it was Jenny's car, right, that was in the accident. So that's why they had to say Jenny was driving and blah, blah, blah. So she just lies to her daughter, right? Uh-oh. At the funeral, Miller arrives. Clara doesn't want to be there. So he says, okay, well, let's get going. And they do, they do some drogas. They do some drugs. They do some pot to make her feel better. And kind of, she wants to be like out of her head today. So he said, okay. And passes her a little bit. They're hanging out in Miller's car. And he's telling her about how he and his girlfriend have like reconciled. Okay, yikes. Morgan, Clara's mom, tracks her phone, finds where she is, finds her sitting in Morgan's car, confronts her about smoking pot, and takes her cell phone away as punishment. Which, like, the mom is so mean in this book. She is so anti-Clara's want to go to, like, acting school. She's so anti-Clara coping. A teenager, and I'm not saying, like, you know what? I'm not even going to get into it. I feel like there should be some grace. On the day you come to me, on the day of my dad's funeral, and you take my cell phone away. You know what I'm saying? It just seems a little effed up to me. I feel like just give some grace to a kid, But what do I know? I'm not a mom. So we cut to chapter 7, Morgan's POV. She is freaking out about how she's going to support herself, her and Clara, because again, she's a stay-at-home mom. Like, she didn't have a job. She doesn't have an income. Without Chris, like, what the hell are we going to do? How are we going to, like, support ourselves? And she ends up in this, like, paralysis of that thought. And instead of getting a plan of action together, she, like, hyper-fixates on why Jenny and Chris were together the day of the accident. So Jonah is there with her, and he's kind of bouncing some ideas back and forth, and he's like, well, maybe there was an affair. Oh my god. She completely rejects this, refuses to believe this, right? In denial, or whatever you want to call it, about the whole thing. And Jonah's like, where's Chris's car? Because it's not here. It wasn't in the accident. Like, what's going on with that? He goes on about investigating and finds out that it's in the parking lot of a hotel. Oh my god. So he and Morgan go to the hotel to get the car and to go inside of the hotel room and collect their belongings. Jonah is the one that goes inside. Morgan can't handle it. She doesn't want to see it. So he goes in, gets all their things, gets the bags. Inside of one of the bags, inside of Jenny's bag, is some lingerie, and it confirms their affair. So she says, okay, well, I don't want to get Chris's car anymore. I just want to go home. They do. Morgan tries to rush out of the car and get into the house, and she ends up having a panic attack in the front yard. And Jonah sits with her, as supportive as you can be in this crazy situation, until it passes. And when she does go inside and she's talking to Clara's watching Elijah, right, the little baby, as they were running around and doing all this stuff. Clara has no idea what's going on, by the way. This is all like parental secrets. And so Clara was just vibing with the kid. Morgan goes inside and she's looking at the two of them, the two kids, and she realizes how much Elijah looks like Clara, like how alike they look, in that Chris is probably Elijah's father. Oh shit. We're in chapter 7. What do you mean? This is craziness, dude. Chapter 8 in Clara's POV is a teenager being a teenager. She sneaks out of the house that night, leaves her mother a note telling her that she's going to be with Lexi. Instead, she goes to the movie theater. She goes driving around, ends up going by the movie theater where Miller works, sees his car in the parking lot, decides to go inside, talks to him. He gives her a free ticket to, whatever movie. Afterward, he comes in there and he's sitting with her and they're chit-chatting and just, getting closer. When she does go home that night, goes back into her room, she finds that her mother has returned her cell phone, and she decides that she's going to go to school the next day, like after, I guess she's had her little window of like bereavement, and she's going to go back to school. So she messages Miller on Instagram. Again, they're just having their little chit-chat. And then suddenly he says, hey, we got to knock this off. My girlfriend has access to my Instagram. And so Clara says, okay, well, just go ahead and text me then, and gives him her number. They continue talking over text until Clara remembers the conversation with her aunt, where her aunt warned her about being the other woman. They stop the conversation and she deletes Miller's number. In chapter 9, Morgan's POV, she wakes up to the middle of the night to frantic knocking, and it's Jonah with Elijah. And Jonah says, I can't do this. Morgan, Jonah, Elijah having this like well, not Elijah's not arguing, but these two are kind of having this argument in the living room until Clara comes out and she's like, what the hell? Grabs the baby, kind of like talks crap. Jonah bolts out of the room. Morgan follows him to be like, hey, what the frick do you mean you can't take care of this baby? What are you talking about? And Jonah accuses her of knowing about the affair and knowing the paternity of Elijah and talking about how he doesn't want to take care of the baby. It's not his baby. He can't deal with this. Like, I'm abandoning this child. So figure it out. And Morgan says, hey, I know this is a lot. Let's take some deep breaths, go home for the night, get some sleep. And then you can sleep on your decision. You can come back tomorrow and tell me what you're thinking. She goes inside and she just keeps lying to her daughter, doesn't tell her a thing, just says, hey, it's everything, the grief and taking care of a baby and being a single dad's just hitting him really hard right now. So we just got to help out where we can. At what point do we just be honest? In chapter 10, Claire's POV. It's 3 days later, still no word from Jonah. He has straight up left this kid in their care. She's talking to her best friend Lexi, getting her caught up on life, everything that's going on. And the whole time she's eyeing Miller across the hallway. They just can't take each other's eyes off of each other. Hello? They just can't stop looking at each other. And that afternoon, they go to leave school. They're in the parking lot. Miller's sitting in his car. Clara approaches. He waves her in. She sits in the car with him. They drive in silence for a couple of minutes until eventually he confesses his feelings for her. What? They're in the truck and he admits his feelings for her. And she pretty much tells him hey, you need to get your shit together. You need to figure out what you want or what you're doing. And he's very clearly battling this moral issue within himself. And so he says, yeah, I know I do. That's why I need you to get out of my truck. She laughs at first. He laughs, but then he says, no, seriously, I need you to get out of my truck now. Okay, I guess. When Clara comes home, she starts questioning Morgan about why Jonah has abandoned the baby. And instead of answering, again, instead of being honest, instead of having open conversations, she just tells Clara to go to the store to pick up diapers. And then Morgan has a breakdown as she's cleaning the baby's bottles. It's so sad. In chapter 12, Clara's POV, she goes to the store, but she conveniently chooses the route that just happens to go by Miller's house. Not only that, she also decides to take the route that goes by Jonah's house. She sees that Jonah's home, and she decides that she's going to confront him for being a deadbeat dad. When she goes in there, she sees Jonah and how unkempt that he is, how dirty the house is, and that he's very clearly depressed and spiraling and whatnot. And she's just pissed off and chews his ass for putting all of this extra responsibility on her mom and how it's not fair. That pretty much you can just give up on your responsibilities and now my mom has to deal with losing her sister, her husband, and now having to deal with a baby and raising me and this house and all of this other crap, and you just get to go and live in freaking La La Land. Yeah, I know, obviously you loved her and it was your baby or whatever, but what the fuck, dude? With all of these words, Jonah says, oh my God, you're right. And he rushes off to go and get Elijah from Morgan. In chapter 13, Morgan's POV, Jonah shows up to the house. He gets the baby and he's saying oh my God, I'm so sorry. Daddy's not going to leave you. Daddy's so sorry, blah, blah, blah. He feels guilty. It was kind of the discussion with Clara was the slap in the face that he needed about being a father and stepping up and stuff. And it made him realize that regardless of who's the dad, that's his baby. He's been raising the kid as his own for 3 months or however freaking long, but I guess it's long enough for him to have an attachment to the kid. So he gets the baby. Morgan says, okay, fine, but if you give up custody again, or if you drop him off again, abandon him again, whatever, I'm filing for custody. So get your shit together. He does. He gets the baby. He leaves. Clara comes home and Morgan says, where the frick have you been? You were supposed to be getting diapers. Clara says, is the baby still here? Because if the baby's not here, I don't know why we need diapers. And they get into this whole argument, fight, just bitter thing back and forth that ends with Morgan telling her daughter that she wishes that she would just run away. Oh, Clara, teenager, being the mature one in the situation, says, Mom, just go get some sleep. In chapter 14, Claire's POV, 2 weeks later, She is sitting in a Starbucks, and this has been the way for her to find like the ability to cope with everything going on, as she literally just goes to Starbucks and orders a venti caramel macchiato, no substitutions. And she's been living on that and like hanging out at the cafe all the time, and avoiding going home. On this particular day, Miller texts her. He comes and hangs out, and she's like in her head, this is definitely not a date. But they banter the entire freaking time, and they flirt, and it's cute, and he opens up, and this is technically where we find out about his grandpa having cancer and only having 6 months to live. So I was a little off base on that one, but that's fine. This is also where he confesses to her, like, hey, I've had a crush on you for 3 years. I've been avoiding you since you started dating, so and so, and then I started dating my girlfriend, but I broke up with her weeks ago. Like, when you were in my truck and you told me to get to my shit together, I had broken up with her that day. It's not like I just did this. This isn't impulsive. Like, we've been broken up for weeks now, and I want you. And so they kiss. It's very sweet. Chapter 15, Morgan's POV. Jonah is over. Oh, the other thing too. So the other reason also that she's avoiding going home is because she knows that Jonah and her mom went to that hotel on the day of the funeral. They have like like the Find My Family or whatever, the little app tracker thing. And she had looked at it when they had disappeared to go and do God knows what, when they were still lying to her. Well, they still are lying to her, but when they had first lied to her about everything, she had checked to see where she was and had seen that the two of them were at this hotel together. And so she's under the impression that her mom and Jonah are having an affair. And she's like, how long has that been happening? So just like miscommunication across the board. And it's just like messy, messy, messy. At least this type of miscommunication trope I understand a lot more. Like a mom wanting to protect her daughter or whatever. And just teenagers being secret in general with like of their own stuff. Is significantly more understanding of this than I am of like romantic miscommunications. But it still pisses me off nonetheless. Jonah is over fixing a door that Morgan had like broken. It's a long story. It doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it. But he's just over vibing. And they are having a discussion about whether or not they're going to tell Elijah and Clara the truth about like Chris being Elijah's father. Morgan doesn't want Clara to know, right? She wants to keep it a secret. She doesn't want to like taint the image of Clara's dad in her eyes. When Clara does get home, Jonah leaves. The mother and daughter, go on to have a conversation. Claire's asking about Jonah because, again, she's, like, suspicious of them having an affair or whatever. And she ends up, like, changing the topic and giving her advice and essentially says, don't make the same mistakes that I did. It was one of the worst days of my life when she found out that she was pregnant with her daughter, which is a terrible thing to say. Oh, my freaking God. And then goes on to have a flashback. And we find out that summer, after she had found out that she was pregnant, they were all at the lake hanging out, and Jonah had approached her and confessed his feelings for her. And he said, hey, obviously I know I'm dating your sister and you're dating my best friend, but like I have feelings for you. Like I want something with you. And she says, no, like we can't betray them like that. And also like I'm pregnant with Chris's kid. Jonah dramatically like escapes into the water and then comes back eventually after he's done playing mermaid and says, okay, well, I'm breaking up with your sister regardless. Oh, okay, cool. So Jenny and Jonah leave to go and do whatever. And this is when Morgan tells Chris about being pregnant. Okay, so this is like all of this happening. The next day, Jonah breaks up with Jenny, disappears off to Minnesota, doesn't say goodbye to Chris and Morgan, just like vanishes into thin air, states away. Are they state? I think they're in Texas. I don't know. But disappears to Minnesota. Chapter 16. We're like 50% of the way through the book, I think. Is that where chapter 6? How many chapters do we have? 38. Close enough. 16. Claire's POV. Her and Miller are texting. Flirting. Miller's telling her about how he got a crush on her from the first time that he saw her in a play and how he feels like so insecure and unworthy of her. They end up walking into school together the next day, which is like a huge deal. Dude, oh my God, I forgot how big of a deal it actually was in high school. That's so funny. She feels guilty though. Like, again, for kind of being the other woman and just like kind of awkward. Like everything's just kind of weird. So she goes to Jonah, right? Again, history teacher at her school, goes to talk to him about some things. He gives some advice and telling her about grief and how it's like a roller coaster ride. And they're talking. And then all of a sudden this fly tried to drink my drink. All of a sudden, her mom appears. And her mom says that she's there because she's applying to be a substitute teacher and that she's going to be re-enrolling in college. Which is great, right? She needs to make money and stuff. But obviously they end up getting in a fight because these two just like bicker. In the middle of their bickering, Miller comes up and kisses Clara on the cheek. Oh no. Again, continue fighting, trading jabs. I'm not going into detail about it because this video would take forever. This is like a 400-page book, dude. Chapter 17, Morgan's POV. She's distressed after this fight with her daughter. Jonah sees this. He goes to comfort her, and it's just drama. Miller comes in. She yells at Miller, and then she asks Jonah if he's going to pick up Elijah from daycare. And it's just like, okay. Chapter 18, Clara. It's lunchtime. She's eating lunch with Miller, and her best friend Lexi has magically appeared yet again. And she's like, well, you should hook me up with one of Miller's friends. They do. They like set each other up or whatever. They end up kissing like Miller and Clara do. So they get to 10. Miller says that he's going to be working and asks Clara to pretty much like sneak out and come to the movies to come and hang out with him. And so she decides that she's going to sneak out and tell her mom that she's hanging out with Lexi, but she's not. Chapter 19. Morgan's POV. Vibing at the house later that afternoon. Jonah picks up the baby, brings the baby to the house. He's still fixing the door and fixing some stuff that she had destroyed in a rage one day. And he says, hey, can I use Chris's toolbox? This is the first time that the toolbox has been touched since Chris's death. Jonah goes to it. He opens it. It's full of love letters from Jenny. Oh, shit. They don't open it. Morgan decides. She like gets it all together and like throws it in her room, and she's like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Okay. They end up talking about like pretty much how much they hate their spouses for putting them through this, or their partners, I guess I should say, for putting them through this, and how like traumatic the situation is, and just like how angry they are, and just like commiserate over it all. They end up like leaning in for a kiss, and right at that moment, Clara pulls up in her car so they can't kiss, and they go about doing other things. Chapter 20, Clara's POV. She gets home, immediately changes, senses the tension and weirdness between her mom and Jonah, but decides she's not going to ask any more questions, and instead deflects it and asks if she can go to the movies, with Lexi. Mom says yes, obviously. So she goes to the movies, hanging out with Miller. Long story short, of course, inevitably, they end up talking about, like, intimate stuff, and I'm like self-censoring. I know, like, oh my god, that's so annoying. Shut up. What do you want me to do? Argue with YouTube. Don't argue with me. They end up talking about intimate stuff. She realizes how like inexperienced she is, i.e. has never done anything, and Miller has. And so he says, don't worry, babe, if we're still together in 5 months, we can do it on prom night. Oh. So they agree to this. And then we cut to chapter 21. From Morgan's POV, same day, same whatever, everything kind of going on. Jonah is cleaning up the kitchen after a bunch of shenanigans. Morgan's putting Elijah to bed, and then the two of them go outside and have a little bit of a conversation. Pretty much Jonah putting her on the spot of like, if you didn't get pregnant, would you have stayed with Chris? Damn, talk about cutting to the chase. So she ends up flipping it on him and confronting him about like, what's it matter? You disappeared anyway. Like you just disappear, and like, you know, what do you want? What do you expect me to say? What does any of it matter? Damn. She calls him selfish for this, and then he snaps back and he's like, I did it out of respect for you and your sister. Like, I don't know what exactly you wanted me to do. And so he storms out of the house. He gets his kid. He does bring his child with him this time. Storms out of the house. Morgan chases after him. Ends up collapsing in her front yard in exhaustion yet again. Where are the neighbors? Are you out in the country? Like, I could collapse in my front yard and it would, it would take a while for any of my neighbors to notice. But I feel like we're in like suburbia. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like the HOA, y'all ain't got neighborhood watch talking about some crazy lady passing out in the front yard. Just seems like that would be the type of area that these people would be living in. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so she's having this like breakdown in the front yard. Clara's back from her date with Miller, hangs out with her mom in said front yard, lays on the grass together, and they're just talking about everything. And she's saying how worried she is about her mom. Morgan tells her, hey, you know, I'm sorry for the fight earlier at school. I don't want you to make the same mistake that I did. So now, earlier when she thought that, it was like internal, you know what I mean? Or it was like not necessarily directly talking about the fact of her giving birth and getting pregnant with Clara ruined her life. But now this is like literally directly telling her daughter that it was a huge mistake. And obviously this offends and saddens Clara, and so she runs into the house. Just so sad. In chapter 22, Claire's POV. On Monday, she goes to class. Jonah says, hey, is your mom okay? She hasn't returned any of my texts. She opens up to him about her concern about her mom. She's losing her mind. She's freaking out all the time. Like, she just seems very like erratic, and I'm just like worried about her. In addition to that, she also texts Miller, and they're going to work on that film project together. She finally told him that she had signed them up for it, and he was excited about it and whatnot. So now they have to actually work on it. So she's going to go to his house after school to do so. At his house, he reveals that his grandpa is on hospice. Jeez. Luis. And he lives with his grandpa because his mom died when he was 10 years old, and then his grandma died more recently, and so he's his grandpa's like primary caregiver. And then they end up like making out a whole bunch, and then they don't do the project like at all. Chapter 23, Morgan's POV. I told you I'm flying through this baby. It's a week later after Jonah and Morgan had this like big fight, and he had stormed out of the house, and he's blowing up her phone because Elijah has a fever and can't attend daycare, and he asks Morgan to watch Elijah while he goes to work. She agrees. She's waiting for him to come over. He drops off the kid, and then now she is texting him throughout the day, giving him updates about the baby and how he's doing and whatnot. And eventually, Clara tells her about the project that she has with Miller and how they're working together, and how Jonah's the one that like set them up or told them about it, or however you want to freaking phrase that. And now she's like frustrated about that. He not frustrated enough to like, you know, stop talking to him again or anything, but she's a little pissy about it. Later that evening, Morgan and Jonah have dinner together. Clara's with Miller, I believe. Morgan and Jonah have dinner together. Bonding. Oh my God, this is so irritating. This is so toxic. She confronts him about sleeping with Jenny a year prior, because she's like, okay, so maybe this isn't your kid or whatever, but like you still had like a one night stand with my sister. So how are you going to admit all these feelings for me and say all of this, but then you slept with her? And he says, well, I was just mad that you didn't come to my dad's funeral. And I was jealous of you and Chris's relationship. He gets his kid, he's about to leave, and he says, you know, asks her if she felt the same way about him, or if she like felt, you know, whatever about him. And before she can answer him, he kisses her. Oh my God. Chapter 24, Clara happens to come home in the middle of this Mac sesh, and she is distressed, locks herself in her room, and is just like angry and questioning how long that they've been having this like romantic relationship. And so in an attempt to like hurt her mother or get back at her mother, she texts Miller and invites him to come over to her house so that they can be intimate that night. Because I guess in her mind, losing her virginity, not my terminology from the book, will like hurt her mom's feelings or something. So cool. Obviously, being a teenage boy, he doesn't care about this. She doesn't tell him that either, obviously. She just says like, hey, I want to do it, sneak into my house tonight after work. So he does. They begin to do it. She's distracted with her anger and like can't enjoy it and ends up crying in the middle of it. He stops. They end up like talking it out, and she tells him about her mom and Jonah kissing and how upset she was, and Miller gets upset that she's using him to get back at the mom. And so he gets dressed and he's going to leave because he's like, that's like actually a really, really effed up thing to do. I can't believe you would use me like that. She says, no, please, 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 just stay with me. So he does. And they fall asleep next to each other. In the following morning, in chapter 25, from Morgan's POV, she's ashamed of what happened and she doesn't want to mess up anything with her daughter. And she's just like really upset about everything. And so she decides that she's never going to talk to Jonah again. Okay, I don't really see how that would work, but that's fine. Knock at the door. It's a real nosy neighbor telling her that there's a broken window screen on the side of the house. Nosy neighbor just tipped her off. So she breaks into Clara's room to see if she's snuck out and instead finds Miller and her sleeping in bed together, sees the box of condoms, and it's a hot mess. Morgan tries to stop Clara from going to school, and instead Clara says, you don't even know it's my birthday today. You forgot that it was my birthday, and then leaves to go to school anyway. What do you mean? Miller had left, obviously, in the middle of the fight. And so, like, in her point of view, Clara's point of view in chapter 26, she goes to school. They meet up in the parking lot. He brings her a venti caramel macchiato, no substitutions, and walks her into class. She goes to her first period class, which is with Jonah. It's her history class. She pretty much ignores him, and she, like, pats herself on the back about it, about, like, not being petty. And then he tells her, like, pretty politely, pretty gently to put her phone away because she's, like, texting in class and whatnot. And in response, she takes her phone and yeets it across the room, throws it against the wall. It shatters. Not really sure who exactly that's hurting other than yourself, but who said teenagers were smart? He escorts her out into the hallway. He hugs her and apologizes, and she just starts to sob. And he asks Clara to talk to her mother about what's going on. Like, she needs to go and ask her mom and talk to her about everything because it's not what it appears. Miller and Clara decide that they're going to skip the second part of school, and instead they're going to go to the local park and talk about their fathers. And she invites Miller to come over for dinner that night. Chapter 27, Morgan's POV. It's dinner time. It's Clara's birthday. She's making lasagna. And it's great. Miller comes over. Morgan's not happy about it, but also she's like, what am I going to do, really? And then Jonah and Elijah show up. Clara is surprised by this, but Jonah bought her a new phone. Not really sure I don't know. I guess I said earlier we should give the teenager some grace. So I still don't think you should reward bad behavior of destroying a freaking cell phone, though. So maybe there's just no winning. They go through dinner. They end up fighting. Morgan and Clara end up fighting. Clara storms out with Miller. Jonah tells Morgan to just let it go. And then Morgan says, well, screw you too, Jonah. Get out of my house. He leaves. Everyone leaves. She's left in the house alone. In the front yard, in chapter 28, Clara runs into Jonah. He kisses the top of her head and apologizes for everything being as crazy as it is. And then he leaves. Clara and Miller have a talk, and Miller says, hey, the way that you use people to get back at your mom is like really, really screwed up. And you need to seriously work on that. Like, I'm going to go home alone now because this is insanity. So he does. Clara goes back into the house, runs into her mom, and ignores her yet again, goes into her room and calls her best friend Lexi to come over. Chapter 29, Morgan's POV. Lexi's over comforting Clara, and Morgan is in her room going through her husband's clothing for donations and whatnot. And in doing so, comes across like a little memory box, photo box things, and finds a photo from when they were 17. And in the photo, she and Jonah are staring at each other, and she's realizing, wow, I have always had feelings for Jonah. I always have, and I do now. And so she storms out of the house, goes straight to Jonah's. He answers the door. She confesses that if she hadn't gotten pregnant at 17, that she wouldn't have stayed with Chris. They're kissing, they're about to get it on. And Jonah says, no, we can't keep this a secret. We can't keep Chris and Jenny's affair a secret from Clara. We have to tell them the truth. They argue. They get through it anyway. They start doing it. Morgan's just thinking about the natural chemistry that they have together. And afterwards, Jonah promises not to tell Elijah the truth about who his father is, as long as Morgan agrees to tell Clara that she wants to begin a relationship with him. Okay. She's excited about this proposition because now I guess everybody can be happy. And then she's like, I love you so much. Chapter 30, Clara's POV. Lexi and Clara are just getting drunk in her room, talking about life. And in the middle of a conversation, Morgan comes home. She's pissed about this, sends Lexi home, and Clara is just going off on her mom. Like, just absolutely popping off about all of the anger and drama and how upset she is for putting her through all of this stuff. And it's just, like, not a good time. Chapter 31, Clara is getting sick in the bathroom, and Morgan goes and comforts her. And this is the first time that they have, like, an actual kind of, like, motherly caretaker-y moment. She comforts her and takes her back into her room. And Clara opens up about feeling guilty for texting Jenny that morning. She had never actually said that out loud to her mom about this guilt that she was carrying. She says this, and her mom sings her to sleep. Chapter 32, Claire's POV. The next morning, she goes to school before it, like, actually starts so that she can have some time to, you know, make things right with Miller. He confesses that he loves her, and she's a little hungover, so she takes this confession, this I love you, this everything's going to be fine, and she goes right back home. Which I can't imagine having a hangover in high school. Well, I never drank. I didn't drink until I was, like, of legal age, to be frank. So who knows? Maybe I just thought that, like, hangovers didn't happen until you were, like, 25. You know what I mean? Anyway, chapter 33. We're in the home stretch. Morgan's POV. She has an interview with a real estate company the following week, and she's just, like, excited about life, and things are kind of starting to turn around, and she remembers the whole birthday vision board thing, and so she goes and finds Clara. She's in her room, you know what I mean, hungover, whatever. But she goes and finds Clara, and she's like, hey, you know, do you want to do your birthday board? She does. She puts her little wishes on there and whatnot. And her wishes involve Morgan accepting Miller, for her mom to be honest with her, and for her mother to support her acting career. They calmly talk through Morgan's concerns about Clara wanting to be an actress, but how she does support her. And Morgan says, hey, you know, in your little hangover crazy insanity last night, you talked about feeling guilty about Jenny. Like, let's talk about that a little bit more. And Morgan tells her, like, hey, you know, I don't want you to feel guilty about that, though, because, like, she wasn't driving at the time of the accident. So don't beat yourself up about it. And Claire says, that's not what you told me. That's not what you said before. You said that she was driving Dad home because he got a flat tire. What are you talking about? Morgan tries to, like, avoid the conversation and change the topic and whatnot, but Clara, like, pushes and pushes and pushes about why they were together and what the truth really, really is. And Morgan finally breaks down and actually tells her, like, the entire truth. Clara is obviously devastated, and all she wants to do is go and find Miller, but she's not in any state to drive, and so her mother agrees to drive her to find her boyfriend to comfort her, right? So many people. It's so dramatic. In chapter 34, she finds Miller at the movie theater, and she tells him everything that's going on, and he comforts her. And as he's comforting her, it's the first time that she, like, actually has, like, empathy for her mom. She, like, actually feels bad for her mom and kind of understands, like, what she's been going through. And, like, maybe my mom's not just, like, this insane, cold-hearted beezy. Like, this is actually a lot for her to have to deal with. Like, this ultimate betrayal, all this, like, you know, ba-da-da-da-da. Like, just realizing that her mom's a human being and, like, you know what I mean? In chapter 35, Morgan's home. She's waiting for Clara. She, like, dropped her off at the movie theater and went back home, and she's just, like, anxious. But she decides that she can't just wait. She has to go back. She goes back to the movie theater, runs into Miller, and Miller apologizes for sneaking into the room and takes her to the movie theater where Clara is waiting. They have a little heart-to-heart of Clara expressing how she's afraid that she's going to inherit her father's ability to betray the ones that she loves. And Morgan tells her, no, but you need to remember your father you need to remember him for how great of a father he was. Don't let him being a bad husband change your view of your dad. Like, just view him as your dad, which is an interesting perspective that I never really, like, thought of in that way. Anyway. In chapter 36 from Claire's POV, we are again in the home. Oh my God, there's 38. I thought there was only 37. I thought there was only 37 chapters. Not that it's like that big of a difference, but mentally I was like starting to check out. Could you tell? There's 38. Oh, is it 38? And then, yeah, there's 38. Oh, I'm dumb. Oh my God. Anyway, chapter 36. It's a short one anyway. It's Clara and it's Claire's POV. Her and her mom leave the theater together and they're holding hands. Oh, they finally made up. They're finally, like, bonding or whatever. In chapter 37, it's like the whole, like, happy home thing, because it's Morgan's POV, and her and Jonah have dinner together the next day while Clara's out with Miller. And Clara comes home and she catches the two of them, like, hugging on the couch. And so she's like, I'm comfortable with it. I'm happy for you guys. And Elijah's there, and they teach Elijah to say dada and say all of their names, and it's just like so cute, and they're all just like crying together and bonding together, and it's just beautiful. That night when Jonah leaves, Morgan walks him out, and they kiss at the car, and he asks her to be his girlfriend. He expresses his concern about not being as financially successful as Chris, but he'll do everything he can to be a good father and to take care of these kids. And this is where the book, the title of the book gets used. I really haven't read you any quotes at all. I know. Hopefully you're not mad at me about that. Like I said, we were trying something different this time. She says, I married Chris because he was the father of my child and I wanted to make it work. I did love him. And I'll always love Jenny too, but you're the first and only person in this world that I've loved without some reasoning or justification behind it. I just love you because I can't help it, and it feels good to love you. The idea of getting to raise Elijah with you makes me happy. And I know before we made love for the first time, I told you I'd regret it, but I've never been more wrong. I didn't regret it that night, and I don't regret it now. I'm confident that I'll never spend a single second of my life regretting you. She decides that she's going to shred those letters that were in Chris's toolbox, the ones from Jenny. She's going to shred them and not even look at them, which she is a much stronger woman than I. I'm not going to lie. I don't think I would be able to do that. I think I would I'm such a nosy bitch, you know what I mean? It's chapter 38. It's our final chapter. It's a few months later. Might as well be an epilogue. I'm tempted to skip it, but I'll tough it through just for you guys. It's Clara's POV, and Miller and Clara are about to show their film project thing, you know what I mean? They're showing it to Jonah and Morgan and Lexi's boyfriend, and it's a humorous mockumentary called Chromophobe about the fear of the color orange, which might be the quirkiest twee bitch thing I could ever think of. Okay, so at the end of it, I'll just read you this last bit, because objectively it's kind of cute. Is it? I don't know. You decide. Movie ends. Everybody claps. Everybody feels a little awkward, but it's fine. And then Miller goes to the laptop that's hooked up to the TV. Okay, I have one more video. I tilt my head confused, but we only made one. Miller looks at me and grins. This one's a surprise. The film opens with Miller staring at the camera. He's holding it himself, pointing it at his own face. He waves, "Hey, Clara." He sets the camera down. He's in his bedroom. He takes a seat on his bed and says, "Okay, so I know you said you don't like anything elaborate, but I kind of started this before you told me that, so I hope you like it." The screen goes black and opens up to footage of the two of us. It's all the B-roll that he's taken over the last several months. Clips of us sitting against the tree at the park, clips of us working on our video submission, clips of us at school, at his house, at my house. The montage of clips ends, and in the next scene, it actually has sound. It's Miller, fumbling with the camera. He's at his truck and he slams the door, pointing the camera at himself. "Hey, Clara, I think you should go to prom with me," he whispers. He whispers when he says it, and then sets the camera on a tripod and points it at me. It was the first day that he had set up the camera when we were at the food truck. He walks away to order our sandwiches, and the footage shows me making silly faces at the camera. The next scene is the day that we skipped school. Okay, I don't really care. It's him just like randomly whispering, "Hey, you should go to prom with me," in like all of these videos, and it's like pretty cute. When the next scene begins, I don't recognize it at all. The camera is pointed at the floor and then at Gramps, like his grandpa. Gramps looks a few years younger in the video, healthier than he looks now. "Get that video out of my face," Gramps says. Miller turns the camera on himself. He looks younger too. He's skinny, probably about 15. Gramps is excited for the show, Miller says sarcastically into the camera, and then he points his camera toward the stage. My heart is thundering in my chest when I recognize the set. My mind also starts to race. Twice, Miller's grandpa tried to tell me about something that happened when they were at the school when Miller was 15, and twice Miller was so embarrassed that he shut him up. Miller kisses the side of my head because he knows I've been wanting this story since the first time that I met Gramps. And it's him filming her, and like, you can hear him saying in the video about like, "Wow, she's incredible." And Grandpa telling him, "I think you just fell in love." And he's like, Miller just laughs and he says, "Shut up." He says, "You did, didn't you? And you got it on camera. What's her name?" Miller shrugs. In the video, obviously. Not sure. Clara, I think. Clara Grant. She played the role of Nora. And then it's just this really cute thing with his grandpa telling him that, like, "Hey, you're going to marry that girl one day." And it's so cute. And the book ends with that evening, Clara goes over to Miller's house and they have pizza because they have successfully moved the town limit sign past his house and the pizza was able to be delivered. They're eating it with Grandpa. And Grandpa gives Miller a copy of his will, which is saying that Miller will inherit a property that he has up in New York, and that, you know, he wants Miller to, like, pretty much like sell it and use the money so that he can go to college. Miller and Clara are excited that they're going to go to the University of Texas in the future, but then they realize that the school like color is orange, and they just had that film about being afraid of the color orange. And Clara jokes that she purchased an orange prom dress. So it's ironic, I guess. It's quirky. How goofy. And the book ends. Yay. No, genuinely, it wasn't bad. Like I said, it was dramatic. It was interesting. There was pizzazz. It's just that the fact that like the whole thing's kind of based on a miscommunication trope, and a lot of it felt like really cliche or like really try hard. A lot of the quotes said words like epic or the whole Starbucks thing, and just like I don't know how to really explain it. It obviously it felt like very I'm not saying this disrespectfully, but it sounded like an old person trying to sound hip. You know what I mean? Or it sounded like, yeah, I guess that's the only way to say it. That sounds so rude though, but you know what I'm trying to say? It just, again, objectively, I understand why people like Colleen Hoover. They're easy to read books. They're interesting. It's pretty easy plot to follow, right? Short sentence structures. It's nothing like groundbreaking, and people love drama, and that's exactly what she writes about. I get it. I get the appeal. I think this one should have gotten a book, obviously, way before the freaking... What the hell is going on? Obviously before the like abuse book that, you know, got published last year with Blake Lively and all that crap, but whatever. It's something. But it also reads like, again, so many of her other books. I was finding parallels in like, oh, I'm pretty sure this like, not trope, but this like quirk, this quality, this joke, this scene, all feel used before. Even the pizza thing gets talked about explicitly in Too Late. There's a scene that they go to like a pizza shop and it's like a whole thing. What else is similar? Is there a movie theater in one of her other books? I'm like really trying to rack my brain of all the stuff that I've read of hers. There's just like such similarities with all of her books. Also, I realized too the other day that she's probably the author that I've read the most things of, other than T. Kingfisher. Okay, anyway, I think that's all that I have to say about it. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are we feeling? What are we thinking? Are you gonna go see the movie? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Sorry, this fly is trying to attack me. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you so much. Did you get a bingo? Dude, this fly, I'm gonna karate chop. Did you get a bingo? Again, let me know. Okay, I think that's all. I'll see you next time. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.